Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be, and welcome to my post on the moral center of our brains. In the novel I'm working on, a poison is added to a country's sausage supply that turns testosterone into a neurotoxin, such that men who wish to retain their ability to think must take feminizing hormones. In the ensuing chaos, both houses of Congress are populated by women, transgender people, and a minority of straight men who have reluctantly taken high doses of estrogen. On the home front, many marriages are destroyed, and an army of men who are enraged to have been forced to become women forms. Although the leader of this army genuinely wants to be a woman because he is greedy for all forms of power, he doesn't let his troops know this. He exploits his army's rage, inflaming them with speeches about how furious he is about his feminization. He's quite a monster. He funds his army by producing and procuring orphan children for expensive island spas that use blood transfusions to give the wealthy patrons a temporary youthful glow, but absurdly swollen hands and feet. He derives a lot of pleasure from watching gruesome Inquisition executions and enjoys spending time with dead bodies. He sexually harasses his non-poisoned male employees. My protagonist's love interest, Mr. Randall, remains masculine because he has not been poisoned, but this makes him a target of his feminized boss's romantic advances. He has to tell his boss that he's beautiful. Ooh. The plans this monster has for his army are nothing short of genocidal, and he knows that regular people are not capable of such psychopathic violence without careful conditioning of their ventromedial prefrontal cortex. It is possible to engineer the destruction of this part of the brain through childhood abuse, early exposure to violent entertainment, or severely traumatic experiences. But he decides to use a shortcut method, a form of lobotomy that is carried out by sticking a swab up into the nose of the soldier so that it punctures the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This procedure is very painful for about 10 seconds, and many of the soldiers pass out. But they are told that it is a necessary diagnostic test for disease, so they all line up and willingly consent. A soldier would say, "It felt like I was being cleaned from behind my eyeball, and then I had a headache and a nosebleed for a few hours. Some of the guys passed out. It was like an initiation ritual to prove how tough we were." Stabbing the ventromedial prefrontal cortex by sticking a swab 4 inches up into the nose and swishing it around would make people more susceptible to advertising and less able to detect deception and sarcasm. In short, it would make them gullible. It would also reduce their response to frightening things, reducing their survival instinct and their sense of moral outrage over horrible things happening to others. It makes the army more merciless and driven by immediate gratification. They maintain their intelligence, but they lose the moral center of their brains. They lose their connection to their memories of shame. In some way, this is a blessing for them, but it also enables them to do horrible things. It removes their pain, but makes them bad. They also lose their ability to be inspired by beauty and symbolism. That's sad. The protagonist of my novel knows something about neuroanatomy, and when the government starts collecting young people for this necessary diagnostic test, she doesn't want her children to consent. But her husband is a very obedient, socially minded man. He yells at her that she is insane when she tells her children to avoid the testing station at their school and hide in the bathroom when it's their turn. She doesn't want them to be lobotomized. Because of this disagreement, her husband threatens to have her committed to a mental hospital. He is unaware that he has been poisoned and lost his ability to think. His stupidity is terrifying for the protagonist because she can see and understand things that he simply can't. The protagonist's career has placed her in the public eye, and she recklessly used her position to say some things that were critical of a dangerous inquisition. They have already begun building a smear campaign to make her look like a crazy pervert. Because of this, she knows that her husband would have little trouble with getting her locked away. Her only hope to escape this fate and save her children from the lobotomization is Mr. Randall, a secret agent ex-gigolo who runs a prostitution network as a front for intelligence gathering. He is a man with some serious issues. So he isn't all bad, though. She kind of falls in love with him, but then she keeps learning more and more horrible things about his history. He has a romantic side, though, and he is rather noble. He's just very sensitive, and he tends to become acquisitive and shut down to protect himself when he's frightened. And Mrs. Randall is no exception to these behaviors. He has an excess of everything a man could want, but he's somehow trapped by it. I'm still trying to figure out the point of view used to tell this story. I started out with a historian investigating the history of Mrs. Randall, Mr. Randall's future wife, the protagonist. But I'm not sure if that will get close enough to each character. I want to be able to show all of their mommy issues and really get inside their heads. And I think the technique I'm going to use is to have the historian investigating online digital records, which may be videos of various scenes that have been recorded and certain performance. It's a time when everybody on the internet, or everybody is sort of a performance artist on the internet. It's just what everybody does. And so there's a lot of self-expression that people do as a matter of habit online, and that this is the historical record. So in the story, the protagonist, this woman, Mrs. Randall, she suffers from her memories, because she has a lot of bad ones, until they are removed. And the thing she says before her memory is erased to the camera will be, "It only gets much worse." It's the message she leaves behind for herself when her memory is erased. Her new self, after her memory is erased, reads these words and thinks, "What an awful perspective. I'm glad that I'm not her anymore." But her son reads the words and cries because he knows how much has been lost. And I think she gets her memory erased after she falls in love with Mr. Randall, but then she learns far too much about his history, and it's just breaking her heart. And she was freaking out, he hits her, and she leaves him, she gets her memory erased, they get back together, it's a disaster. But I have to get back to work and finish this book. So, until next time, thanks for watching. Please check out the earlier books I've written. They give a lot of the background for these characters that I'm working with right now.